Hi everyone, this is Eltham Library and it's made out of mud brick. If you live in the Shire, you'll have seen plenty of dwellings built out of this material. Nillumbik is famous for its thick clay soil, so while it's really hard to build a garden, you can build a house. What started out as a literally dirt cheap way of building a house has developed into something that's iconic, architecturally designed and a sustainable way of building dwellings. And it all started here. Early settlers called it wattle and daub. You build a frame out of poles, you line those poles with smaller wooden sticks, and you fill in the gaps with the earth around you. Once buildings like Shilling Log Cottage, or timber buildings and brick buildings became common, mud brick as a style was pretty well abandoned. In the 1930s and 40s, a couple of locals began to revive the style because it ticked two very important boxes. It was very cheap and it was do-it-yourself. Mud brick building involved using recycled second-hand building materials, and building a house was very, very expensive at that time, so this was a hugely popular trend. They also saw themselves as creating a style that was not suburban. They wanted to live in the natural environment, and that's very much the style of mud brick houses.
Mike Young, been designing and building mud brick since I was 17 or 18 when I started working with Alistair Knox, the late great Alistair Knox. Alistair was an incredible person. People loved him or hated him. Alistair certainly, in my time back in the late 70s and early 80s, was very instrumental. We all loved Alistair. Montsalvat came about around the same time as Alistair also. Alistair was a bank clerk and hated it and resigned from that work.
Alistair Knox working at a bank turned out to be very important. Banks generally in those days wouldn't lend for earth houses. They didn't consider them legit. Alistair Knox working at the bank came up with a scheme so that you could borrow to build a mud brick house. If it weren't for him, the style could have ended in the 1950s.
I think Eltham was quite a settling place for a lot of artists and environmentalists. Alistair really popularised mud brick back in those days. It's estimated there's about 2,000 mud brick houses throughout Nillumbik. Most people that are active in mud brick construction around Australia, their roots somehow wind back to Alistair and or Eltham. There's no comparison. The mud brick is a beautiful medium. It's the size of 5 house bricks. It's ecologically sound. Often it's just made from the clay that you dig from the ground when you excavate your home. Being such a thick thermal mass, they're 10 inches thick or 250 millimetres. The highs in summer are less high and the lows in winter are less low. It's a beautiful aesthetic, is the mud brick house. And it can be rendered in any way you like. You can have them natural and rustic, or you can render them within an inch of their life so that they're flattened, white and modern.
Mud bricks have low embodied energy. So what does that mean?
Essentially, embodied energy is the energy that is embodied in a building material in preparing it for use for construction. So, it might be a 90 by 45 MGP 10, a piece of structural timber that gets used in a wall frame. Something like that, obviously there's the tree that's got to be cut down, it's got to be cut into shape, it's got to be graded, and it's got to be transported to site. So you can measure the amount of energy that goes into getting that piece of material on site. Very often the clay comes from the site on which the building is to be built. Now the Eltham Library is a mud brick building. It's essentially mud brick and timber, so a very sustainable building. But it's got copper gutters and downpipes. So these are materials that will never rust.
Ironically, mud brick is probably the most ecologically sound building from the ground up.
Now, to render mud brick, originally you needed a bonding agent, and the original bonding agent was cow dung. Times have changed.
The cellulosic part of it, so the part that functionally acts as a glue, is cow dung, and specifically fresh cow dung, which is, granted, not as easy to find around the Eltham Nillumbik area as it was, say, 40, 50 years ago. So once the mud brick has been built, that's basically where we get involved. So architects or home builders or what have you, they come to us and we give them a rundown on the sort of coatings and whatnot they can use and do. John was quite good at just making and matching stains based on what the requirements were of Alistair and other builders and architects that he happened to be working with at the time.
I think Alistair was around, he was just around at the right time. So I've seen a door from a drinks cabinet that's been used as a window, and I've seen a porthole used in a mud brick wall.
Mud brick as a style has traditionally been associated with hippies or alternate lifestylers, but the demographics in this area have significantly changed.
I suppose in the last 10 years I've built, large 40 square family homes in Eltham South. They talk about muted tones and textures and character and things that fit within the environment and within the tree canopy.
For centuries people have done themselves or have done as a community. And you have this feeling of continuity, the sense of carrying on something special. So I think these mud bricks are really quite special in that regard.
So next time you're passing a muddy, as they're called, you are passing a piece of local history. Long may they stand. Thanks for watching.